the 10th installment of the Toy Storage Nation series, TSN Conversations Unplugged. This series is based on questions we most often get at Toy Storage Nation. Today's topic is adding traditional storage to RV and boat storage. Today's participants are Angie Guerin, Executive Vice President, MakoRabco, and Greg Ellsworth, President of Self-Storage Consulting Group. I also want to mention that Greg was recently appointed this term's Toy Storage Nation Advisory Board President. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, I was hoping you could both briefly introduce yourselves and give us a bit of background. Angie, can we start with you?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Amy. And happy to be here. I'm Angie Guerin. I'm the Executive Vice President of MakoRabco. We're a metal building company that specializes in self-storage construction and have over the course of the last 30 years had an ancillary focus on the boat and RV market, both canopy and fully enclosed storage. And we're super happy to support the folks at Toy Storage Nation as well as any developers who have questions about the construction of those types of projects.
Thank you, Angie. And Greg?
Thanks, Angie and Amy. My name is Greg Ellsworth, President of Self-Storage Consulting Group. We do most things in the self-storage realm. We start with feasibility studies, land acquisition, architecture, general contracting, and third-party management. I've worked with Angie and Amy for a long time, both of whom I respect very highly and appreciate being able to be associated with them today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Well, you guys were kind of my dream team for this, and I'll explain why. Angie, with MakoRabco, you guys work with both traditional storage clients and also boat and RV. And so I'd like to pick your brain about how some folks do combine that in both scenarios, whether today we're going to talk more about folks who are looking to develop a boat and RV storage facility. And does adding traditional make sense? But at the end, we'll also talk the flip. Maybe somebody has a traditional storage facility and they've got extra land and they're thinking maybe boat and RV would make sense. So, and then Greg, jack of all trades, you do just about everything all the way through the development process, but you do both boat and RV and traditional storage. But I hear you also advocate quite often for including traditional into boat and RV storage. So I guess that leads right to my first question. Is there a perfect scenario? And I know that's a little open-ended, but is there a scenario that you look for a project that it would make sense that you're looking to develop boat and RV and adding traditional storage into the mix? Does it have to do with the size of the land, location, the kind of geography, that type of thing? Is there anything you look for?
Yeah, when we're looking and underwriting projects to build and develop, we're obviously looking at what the demand is in the market. And a big driver of that demand are the rental rates of our competitors to make sure that we can get the return necessary to justify the loan or justify the preferred returns, however the capital stack is organized. But what we have identified in the vast majority of our existing self-storage and boat and RV storage facilities, as well as in our underwriting of the feasibility studies, is that roughly 35% of our RV storage tenants also have a storage unit. So what we have started to do, and what we've done for a few facilities now, and it's working out extremely well, is that if we have 100,000 square feet of boat and RV storage, whether that be canopy or enclosed, we'll add 35,000 square feet of traditional storage in order to be our own best customer, meaning I don't want my RV tenants storing their household goods somewhere else in the event that what we're talking about happens, and that is that other storage facility adds RV as an offering to their unit mix, and then I lose the RV tenant. So we have found it to be very beneficial to add a contingency of traditional storage with our boat and RV storage units.
I'm going to jump a bit ahead and then I want to go to Angie. Greg, when you're looking at these facilities, are you hoping that it's the same folks that are utilizing it for the boat and RV storage that are utilizing it for the traditional storage, or do you tend to find that you have two sets of different clients?
We definitely have two sets of different clients. However, our boat and RV storage tenants, that's typically a higher demand in a lot of newer markets, as there's not a lot of boat and RV storage facilities that offer the amenities that we're building. However, what that allows for is a very quick lease up on the traditional storage, because as they move their boat or RV into that unit that is highly prized and highly sought after, it's just natural and convenient for them to also move into the traditional storage. So we get kill two birds with one stone, but it accelerates our absorption and the lease up of that property.
Mhm.
As time goes on, the traditional storage starts to get filled up with outside tenants. So it is a mix of both boat and RV and traditional storage. But
Mhm.
ultimately, as long as I'm getting the rental rates that I underwrote,
Mhm.
I'll take anybody that's willing to rent a unit.
Got it. Got it. What about location? You know, we often talk about boat and RV storage can be further out along the way to a recreation destination, but do you tend to find that if you are going to add quite a bit of traditional storage into the mix, that it needs to be closer in to where folks are living?
The underwriting of a boat and RV storage facility is different for a bank than it is for a traditional storage. We can get away with a little bit less of a population base with boat and RV because people travel.
Mhm.
However, there still is demand in those fringe or outlying markets that isn't satisfied through the traditional buildings because they can't get them underwritten. There's not enough population, and there's not enough quantifiable demand for the bank. So
Mhm.
therefore the risk is too high and they don't lend. So it actually makes it easier if we add boat and RV storage to our property offering, and add traditional storage so that we can get it in a market that otherwise banks are going to shy away from, tertiary or rural markets. We can
Mhm.
add that storage in, absorb the demand that's local, that isn't substantial enough to justify a standalone self-storage project.
Right. Thank you. You answered a future question as far as financing. Adding traditional into the mix can help get things pushed through because the banks understand traditional sometimes a little better than they do boat and RV storage. Um, Angie, with MakoRabco, I kind of look at you as a litmus test as far as the projects that you guys tend to be working on in the boat and RV storage arena. What percentage would you say are adding traditional storage into the mix? And then also with what you guys do, because you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, you do both canopy and enclosed for boat and RV?
We do.
Okay. Do you tend to find a unit mix? Does the unit mix at all on the boat and RV side tend to sway one way or another if you're adding traditional storage into the mix?
Gosh, I mean, we see all kinds of different types of projects. And I would say, to answer your first question, um, there is probably in 50% of these boat and RV projects that we're looking at some small component of self-storage. I think the more experienced you get in the boat and RV storage space, the more likely you are to incorporate some some of that standard self-storage type unit base. And that, I think, has a lot to do with, the buyer's mentality of, hey, you've these boat and RV spaces are harder to find than the standard mini storage. And if I'm going to operate, or if I'm going to work with one company, why not work with one company for all of my storage needs and pay one bill at the end of the month for my boat and RV and my mini storage needs? It's kind of familiarity with the brand. So we see a lot of developers that have maybe started with just a boat and RV standard unit mix, maybe in their second or third development, incorporating some of that standard self-storage dynamic in their mix. I would say that most of the time where we're seeing self-storage predominantly getting designed in these boat and RV facilities is in areas where maybe the site isn't super congruent with putting parking spaces in. Maybe it's in a corner of the property where it's, accessing or turning into a unit might be a little more difficult. And standard mini storage is a great placeholder for those spaces that otherwise we wouldn't be able to use on that site. So at the very least, even if they're not looking at, hey, I want 35,000 or a 35% ratio of mini storage to my boat and RV space, we'll usually advise like, hey, you've got, a 40 by 40 corner that we can infill with some standard units. And in that case, as far as unit mix, I think I'd probably look at, whatever would be standard for that market for storage in general, which, we look at what the demand is based on You know, is it a suburban, is it a rural, is it an urban market? And try to design a unit mix that meets that criteria for the storage buyer.
Makes a lot of sense. What about, are you seeing demand to add traditional storage and folks that are buying a BC class facility and looking to upgrade it? Greg or Angie, have you worked with any clients in that arena where they're looking to upgrade and say, hey, you know, in addition to maybe putting canopies in here, gating, fencing and whatnot for the boats and RVs, we also want the opportunity of the additional income, but also the convenience to have traditional storage for our clients?
Angie, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think, are you talking about like the operator, the boat and RV storage operator that is maybe just has outdoor parking and now looking to upgrade?
Yes, yeah, more like a parking lot, or, you know, when we talk about Class A, and I should always probably start off on this, we talk about Class A being four things. It needs to be covered in some manner, whether that's canopy or enclosed. It needs to be gated, it needs to be fenced, and it needs to be paved in some manner, and that can also include a true grid type material. But really, this is all about protecting, securing. These are super expensive toys that folks are buying, but they're also willing to drive further for that and the conveniences. So, you know, someone buying a lower level facility and looking to upgrade it to that level. And we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, I would say that we're, you know, we look at several of those types of deals a year where we've got a longtime owner of an RV storage lot that's really looking to bring a higher level of product into a market. I don't often see at that juncture that we're looking at adding mini storage, and maybe, you know, maybe that's a dynamic of, you know, changing an operating philosophy from being, you know, an RV storage operator to a mini storage operator. But I think, you know, there's sometimes zoning hurdles that come through with that as well. If you've got a, you know, grandfathered in parcel where people are parking RVs, does the city want to agree to change its usage to mini storage? So I think you just always have to be careful about, you know, if you are a longtime owner operator of a site like this, that you work with your local jurisdiction to make sure that anything you do to improve the site is a use by right, or what, you know, just understanding the process that you'd have to go through permitting.
Thank you, Angie. Did you have anything to add to that, Craig?
Yeah, I do. You know, right now it is very difficult to acquire self-storage properties with a decent cap rate. And a lot of these tertiary or B or C or D properties are the ones that are transacting because either the owner isn't as sophisticated or it's not justifying or generating the revenue that would qualify it for a bigger Class A property. And where we've had the best success at acquisition recently is buying these B, C, D properties and improving upon them by adding either additional temperature controlled storage, drive up storage, canopy storage, something that elevates the NOI of that property, thus bringing it up to a Class A property through not only the amenities and the offering of what the units allow for, but also the revenue type. If you're looking for an exit strategy, the REITs are all going to want to acquire a bigger, higher producing property, and this is a great way to go. In my experience, when we acquire these properties that have upside potential, working with MakoRabco and having them come in and do a canopy while I'm still able to generate revenue from the existing storage, that's an ideal scenario for us. It mitigates the risk for the lenders or for the capital that we put in. It allows us to generate demand through the marketing while we're building, so that when we're done building, everything just coalesces extremely well. We lease up quickly, we're able to justify rates, and we hit the market with the appropriate rate instead of lowballing the rates to get traction at the beginning. I use the 6 months of construction time to test that market and really narrow down where those rates need to be in order to maximize return for the investment made.
Thank you.
Greg, are you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Angie.
Oh, are you seeing a lot of these deals? I mean, I guess a lot. I mean, I feel like it seems to me that the folks that are and that I talk to that own and operate these kind of outdoor parking spaces lots, particularly in my market in Southern California. Um, like there's not a whole lot of that type of business transacting at all. People are, they're a lot of times they've been at it for 15, 20 years, and it's a nice monthly paycheck with like zero capital outlay. So you see a lot of offers happening to go acquire these properties, and a lot of owners saying, hey, it's a great business. I'm not gonna change what I'm doing, and I'm not gonna give it up.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing the same thing. It's very much a diamond in the rough when you're able to identify a property that has value add. But what we are seeing is as these baby boomers that have owned these storage properties are looking to retire and they want to cash out, or the kids are not interested in continuing to manage their properties, they are transacting. A lot of them, though, will transact off market because the baby boomers they don't want to share their financials openly. It's almost like they're embarrassed, or they want to maintain that data sensitive to them. It doesn't matter. It's a business. And if you want the top dollar, you take it to market and, send it to Devin Beasley's a member of the TSN board. You send it to him and he for sure will get you the top dollar, which I hate as a buyer because he drives up prices through adding value and selling it well. But a lot of them are going to be off market, and a lot of them are they're not even going to know that they have this added value with the vacant land or the adjacent property that's been undeveloped. And so we've got a few that we talked about earlier this week, Angie, that we're going to be sending you that are value add that we've been searching for a long time. So it does take time to cultivate that network of properties that could have that additional value through development or expansion or improvement.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Greg, Angie had talked a bit about entitlement. When you're adding traditional to a boat and RV storage project, is there anything else you need to be dealing with for the city as far as getting approvals? Are they two separate types of approvals? Are they the same under one umbrella? Explain that a little bit. And does it help to add traditional storage that way, or is it a little more of a fight with the city?
Yeah, traditional storage brings with it a couple more struggles. With canopies, what we can do is break those up and stay underneath the maximum amount of square footage to avoid sprinkler requirements. Traditional storage, it's a little bit harder because it's more efficient to build them in bigger blocks for us as the operator and developer. So when going in and adding additional traditional storage to a site, you may need to bring fire lines further and plumb those into the building, whereas in a canopy, you may not have that requirement. So understanding what that does to your infrastructure that you may not even have on the property. If phase one, the existing property doesn't have sprinklers, doesn't have fire lines, they may want your expansion to have those, which then causes problems because then you're tearing up all your asphalt, you're having a new connection in the street, you're pulling into your property. And depending on the jurisdiction, changing too much of the square footage of the property is going to make the grandfathered approvals that don't have the up-to-date sprinklers or the ADA access. It's going to remove that grandfather clause. Then you have to bring up your existing to current code, which then the cost just snowballs. So understanding from the big picture, the implications of what you're planning to do before you kind of dive in both feet and understand what the capital requirements and the municipal requirements are going to be before you get in too far into it.
Thanks.
What process do you guys go through, Greg, to vet that early on? I mean, from our perspective, engaging, you've got a couple different, I guess, hurdles to cross when you're looking at potentially improving a site or adding, new storage products to an existing operating business. But do you immediately go to, your architectural research? Do you engage an architect or a civil to uncover some of those things that are going to be big budget line items for your project?
Yeah, so we have architectural in-house. Before I even go talk to the city, I have my architect do the research on the code. A lot of times the planning department does not know their code. They have their wish list, and a lot of times that's construed as the required list of things you have to complete. But when we read the code ourselves, we're able to identify what things are true and accurate. And I'll give you an example. We were looking to buy some property in California. It's a project that you built for us, Angie, in Ripon, California. We walked into the planning department and I said, I'm looking to buy this parcel of land. Is it available for storage? And the planning department manager told me, looking me in the eye, no, you cannot do storage on that parcel. So I walked out of the office rather defeated, went back to talk to the seller, and the seller said, no, you are allowed to do it. And so we went back and you know, got our team together. What we found out was what the planner was referencing was we weren't allowed to do boat and RV storage on the parcel. We were able to do traditional storage. Our desire was to do boat and RV. And so we submitted our site plan with 14 by 50 storage units. They were fully enclosed. There was no canopy. We had traditional storage built into that unit mix. And I very distinctly remember we went to the planning commission meeting and the city said, we don't allow boat and RV. And I said, none of this is boat and RV. It's all traditional storage. And they said, what are you going to be putting in a 14 by 50 storage unit other than an RV? I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, household goods. And what we did later was we appealed that decision and got a variance, which they approved to allow boat and RV. So you have to know how to navigate those cities. What it came down to was the city planner did not want boat and RV there. It wasn't that it wasn't allowed storage initially, it's that he didn't want it. And so we had a fight on our hands to get that variance, but we did. And I'm glad because that's what we went through planning commission with, and that's what you built for us out there was a lot of 14 by 50 storage units and traditional storage. And I can just tell you, we opened a couple of weeks ago and we're already at, I think, 23% today, and we've been open 12 days, 14 days. So
That's great.
yeah.
I think that's probably the key to all of this is like, understanding feasibility and also, having a good core group to help and experienced group to help flesh out what your capital outlay is going to look like. Greg's he's got an edge on all of us because he's just so educated in all of those different facets of the development process. He can look at the feasibility and also engage his team, from an architectural standpoint to assist his clients and their development group. The rest of us would have to probably engage a feasibility analyst, an architect, a civil engineer, or if we're lucky and have Greg's cell phone number, we just call him.
Absolutely. And that's why we're seeing even folks who have been in development for many years in other arenas, multifamily housing, and just to name one, but that are understanding for boat and RV. And you need to work with someone who's been there, done it. It seems real simple until you get into the mix of it. And what's great about the other developers is they know enough to know they need the help in this area. They're not trying to go it alone. And then there's another class of folks that think, hey, this can't be so complicated until they start. And then that's when they come to us and, kind of running into hurdles, or sometimes, as Greg can attest to, kind of go back to the drawing board because a feasibility study was never truly done to capitalize on that property that they have. Greg, do you sometimes get that?
Oh, yeah.
Folks that have
there's been a few properties where they sent it to us and they had a site plan done by their civil engineer and they send it to us and say, this is what we're looking to build. Can you bid the architectural? And what a lot of them don't understand is a civil engineer doesn't understand the market demand. They don't understand how many 5x5s to build, how many 10x10s to build. What they're doing is they're maximizing the layout based on the topography and the utilities in the underground that's relative to that property. But the demand on the unit mix side and building the right unit mix is where you make your money. And working. So once you decide on that unit mix, then you move into the architectural. And this is where I very much appreciate working with other professionals like Angie, because understanding that my structural steel company also does engineering allows me to expedite that process. And frankly, I'm not wondering if the structural plans match up with their shop drawings, which is what the erection team has. I know that that's all a seamless process. So making sure that we put the right uh, structural supports in for the lights and the exit signs, and putting the burglar bars up as high as I need or spaced out at the right distance. Those are all things that you're not going to know unless you've done it. And as smart as people are going to Harvard and getting these degrees with their masters in real estate development, it it's really in the trenches that you learn this thing. And most of the success is based on execution. I can give you a book. Angie could write a book on how to build a metal building. That does not mean that you're going to be able to go out tomorrow, source all the materials, and put that building together like a Lego set. It just doesn't work that well.
Well, as Greg mentioned, I think, the devil's always in the details, and there's certain things that are like, self-storage is, and boat and RV storage for that matter. This is not rocket science. It's, but it's also got its own set of landmines. There's things that we can help, experts can help people navigate through that they might otherwise spend months trying to circumvent. So I think, relative to boat and RV storage, and really the key from a structural and consultant standpoint is obviously having an architect and having the feasibility that lines up with what the market demand is. Having a good partner in your civil engineer that understands storage. Sometimes that's hard to find. And in that case, partnering with a civil engineer or a structural engineer who knows what to look for in the civil to help you avoid some of those landmines with layout and design is critical. I think the good news about storage is it is a super repetitive structural design. There's ways to build it that are really economical if you start the process looking at the structural engineering through that lens. You tend to have a construction budget that is congruent with what other developers are spending that are doing it the right way. If you get off that path early on with a structural engineer or a design thought process that doesn't marry up with kind of the standard approach to building these things, you could end up doubling the cost of your build just because an engineer looked at the problem in it, through a different lens. Or, maybe you got to get a pretty close proximity perspective in design, but the details that are non-structural that you actually need to operate your business haven't been thought through. So any versed architect design team in storage is going to bring, an extreme added value to the development process for a new developer.
Thank you, Angie. You hit something right on the head that I hear a lot of folks who may use a designer or architect outside of storage or boat and RV storage, and the property's laid out so it works really efficiently and maximizes by a layout design, but a true feasibility study wasn't done to support the types of spaces they're looking for, to make sure that the rental rates that they're wanting, maybe mainly enclosed, and you go back and do a feasibility study and it really doesn't support that. I hear that all the time, that it's got to come from what can you rent, the spaces that you can rent, and then work it backwards. Greg, would you agree? Do you get some of those layouts?
Oh, completely.
And that's why working with someone like you, Angie, and Greg is so important.
Yeah, so we do feasibility studies a little bit differently, and for that exact reason. So we start by doing the market research, oftentimes considered a market study, analyzes supply, demand, per capita income, population numbers in the local market. And that helps us create a rough picture of what the unit mix demand is in that market. Once we have that data, we turn all that data over to our architectural team and they draw a preliminary site plan. That preliminary site plan takes into account a lot of things that feasibility study consultants aren't going to know. Floor area ratio, which is the maximum amount of square footage you can build on that property, takes into account setbacks and easements and various problems with that property that are going to limit the ability to build everything that property would otherwise fit. And we play with that unit mix until we feel like it's good. Then we send it back to the consulting team or the feasibility study team. They apply rental rates to that unit mix that the architect has built. And then we start playing with it. What is going to give us the return? What's going to lease up quickly? And we start balancing those things. And we don't finish the feasibility study until we feel like the unit mix is correct based on the market demands, access, layout of the property, and city code. We start looking at early on city code, going back to an earlier question, Amy, you had, and how you navigate some of those things with the city. If we know that the maximum amount of square footage you can build without doing sprinklers is 5,000 square feet, well, that's what our canopies are going to be laid out. But if it's 10,000 square feet, then that's how we start drawing it. And if there's a 10-foot setback or gap in between your canopies, that one unit in the middle is not going to be covered, and therefore it needs to have a different rate. That plays into your pro forma. So a lot of people think, let's do the whole feasibility study, then draw a site plan that tries to meet the feasibility study. And then we hope by the time it's built, everything's correct. Whereas we're doing data and modifications to that site plan all along so that the site plan and the data are married from the beginning, and it works a lot more seamlessly.
Thank
I think
you.
one thing that you said too, Greg, that people miss is that like that feasibility study should be really the market research should be the first thing that anybody does. You know, you've got an idea to build RV storage. You know, you've found a market that you think you like or that you want to be involved in. You think you've got a site that theoretically could produce the amount of revenue that looks attractive. I always recommend to our clients, kick the tires until your toes bleed. And once that thing occurs, then get a feasibility expert involved. They're going to really, a group like Greg's can really hone in on what it's going to cost to build it and what should actually be built on that site. And that is the best product that money can buy for a developer, because it's just a small price to pay for peace of mind. You get positive indicators at that level. Everything that you do from that point on is gas in the tank. It's just, kind of puts you on a path that is, got a little bit more guarantee of success.
The other thing, Angie, just to add on to that really quickly, the other thing is if you have kicked the tires until your toes bleed, as you say, when you go to borrow money from a lender, you look far more competent, far more confident in the ask, because you have all the data, you have the answers to their questions, and there isn't this uncertainty that the lender will absolutely pick up on. And so getting your team right and getting the data written down in a format that makes sense helps even the lending perspective dramatically.
Now, Greg, you probably kind of alluded to this, but I'm going to kind of flip this around. I would think a reason not to add traditional into the unit mix, obviously, is if you've done a market study and that area is, doesn't have a demand, it's saturated, because there's certain areas where storage is saturated, but we still have a need for boat and RV. Is there any other thing that you look at that would inhibit thinking, maybe traditional storage with this particular boat and RV storage property doesn't make sense?
As a general rule of thumb, the more square feet in one unit, the lower the price per square foot. So the larger units inherently carry a smaller price per square foot, generally speaking. There are some outlying situations that I'll reference, but we look very heavily at the prices in the market to justify that unit mix. They may have demand, but if the rental rate for those units is too small, I won't build those units because it doesn't have the return that I need. We built our corporate office in Gilbert, Arizona, and I often talked about this location, but we have 14-foot wide, 50-foot deep, drive-in, temperature-controlled RV storage units. We initially underwrote those at about $900 a month, and we were crossing our fingers and praying that they were going to rent out. come to find out, we've increased the price on those almost 75% from where we started because the demand is unsatiable. We need to build more of them. And so we kind of tiptoed into that market to understand. But really, Cushman Wakefield comes out with the per capita square footage for the population numbers, and that works for traditional storage. For boat and RV, what we use mostly is recreational demand markers, lakes, national parks, reasons to own and utilize that vehicle. We also look very heavily at competing occupancies, whether that be outdoor uncovered, covered, or enclosed. But what is my favorite metric to use is what are they garnering in that market for price per square foot on any type of boat and RV storage? If they've got really high rental rates, well, that's a great marker for me, because as much as I'm in this business to have high occupancies, I'm in this business more so to make money, which comes from the rental rates, not necessarily just a high occupancy, low rental rate. So there's a lot of things that need to be balanced and understood to get to the finish line.
Thank you. I have a couple operational questions. When you start to add traditional in with, boat and RV storage, from a management perspective, say you have an on-site manager or it's third-party management that is looking to sell the spaces, is there any additional training? Selling a traditional storage space, is it different than selling the boat and RV space? Or is it the same?
It goes hand in hand, but it is very different. The things that you need to keep in mind with boat and RV as opposed to traditional storage is drive around access, turnaround access for these units. There are certain tenants that come in and say, I need a storage unit for my boat or RV, but I am not good at backing it up. I admit full well that I cannot back this thing up. So we try to leave a couple units that have great, easy access for those types of tenants.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that negatively. It just takes time. And if they're a new boat and RV owner, it takes time for them to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So with traditional storage, they have their own liabilities and concerns that you need to talk about and draft a lease agreement that protects you from.
That's my next question.
With boat and RV, you have a completely different set of care, custody, and control measures that need to be addressed. So we have two separate leases that talk about traditional storage and boat and RV. Now, the gray area is when you store a boat and RV inside a storage unit with household goods. And the way that we adjust for that is that we have a rental agreement for traditional storage, and then they sign a lease agreement addendum for the boat or the vehicle that's inside that storage unit. Mm-hmm. And the way that I train my managers is if that vehicle has a whole number or a VIN number or is registered, that is going to be a vehicle. It's got four wheels, a trailer. If it doesn't have any wheels at all and it floats or flies or hovers, I don't care. If it's got a VIN or a serial number, that's going to be a vehicle that needs to be treated differently. And the reason being is they typically have very flammable things in them. A box of t-shirts is not flammable in and of itself, but a jet ski with 20 gallons of gasoline is flammable. And I do not want the liability of allowing them to store 20 gallons of gasoline next to a storage unit that is storing trim work for a custom home. It just doesn't, it doesn't work well together. So we do get two separate leases, and we train our managers to kind of go over those concerns with the tenants prior to moving in and making them aware of how to store their vehicles properly.
Thank you. And then with management software, because so much is done, through the computer, through your cell phone these days, right? With regards to rental, and that's become extremely important. Can the management software be, utilized for both types of rentals and also just overall management? Does someone need to, I would assume you can't go in and bundle when you're renting because you need to have separate lease agreements. How does that all work?
So we require a bunch of extra items when they're storing boats and RVs. The first thing is I want to make sure that the RV they're storing or the vehicle they're storing is theirs instead of an ex-wife's vehicle that they're trying to hide from them, or they're trying to do a chop shop inside of one of our closed units. They need to show proof of registration or insurance, because that's another big ticket item, is they think that once it's in the storage facility, they can drop their insurance. So we collect that information to ensure that the person signing the rental agreement is also the individual that owns the item being stored. And so there are some differences in making sure that we're doing it the right way.
So I understand the insurance concerns from the renter's perspective. What about for the facility owner? Are there any additional concerns when adding traditional in that need to be covered? Can they be all covered under the same policy? Is it different?
Disclosing that to your insurance agent is the best way to go. There is a different rate for canopies as opposed to enclosed storage. A lot of times they'll have different coverages for that extra hazardous waste materials in your policy when you have boat and RV, because they can leak oil and transmission fluid and gasoline into the soils, creating a environmental problem. And you need to have disclosures in your rental agreement that it's the responsibility of the tenant to make sure that their vehicle isn't leaking, but also the joint responsibility of the property manager to make sure that they're vigilant. If they notice a grease spot underneath the vehicle, we're addressing that and addressing it appropriately. And I just realized I forgot to answer your question on the management software. We've used a bunch of different management softwares. The one that we use allows us to upload various documents. So it is not tailor fitted to boat and RV. And I don't know of one that is perfectly fitted for boat and RV. However, it allows at a bare minimum to manage the facilities appropriately for the boat and RV storage component, and still check all the boxes to make sure that, you know, Jeff Greenberger and the attorneys of the world are happy with what we're doing.
Angie, I do have a question for you, and then I'm going to get back to some of the more operation side of things. But is there a typical, and again, this again comes back to everything Greg's been saying for unit size, it comes back to the feasibility study, but with projects that you guys have been doing where folks are adding traditional storage into the mix, is there a certain size unit they tend to gear towards, or is every project so unique?
Gosh, I mean, again, I think it kind of is going to fall back onto the feasibility recommendations. And, you know, if we were going to, I guess if we were going to advise on what storage product mix was going to work the best on in any given geography, again, we would look at, you know, what kind of market is it? And when you get into more rural markets, typically the unit size demand is a little bit larger. Strangely, your typical tenant's not gonna be super interested in a 5x5 or a 5x10. And the more urban you go, the smaller or more dense your unit mix gets. So if it's very close to a city, typically you're seeing more or a higher quantity of these smaller 5x5, 5x10 type units. Get out further into the country, typically you're in a 10x15, 10x20, 10x30 type market. So geography can kind of inform that decision, but again, I think you want to look at what is your feasibility study recommend you do with unit mix, and try to incorporate those recommendations.
Thanks, makes total sense. One last question, and then what I'd like to do is have both of you give your name, your company, and also your contact information again, and just talk a little bit about what you do in these markets, because you guys cover a lot on both sides. With regards to security, are there any additional security issues that you need to look at when you're adding traditional in, whether it be, you know, can you use the same access control systems? Do you need to look at any other type of lighting, anything like that? Or you have any think a little differently because you have another set of clientele coming in? Where are you on that? What are your thoughts as far as security issues that you need to address?
So my favorite thing is that I can get a 1080p picture of the individual breaking into a storage unit. I can print that up and give it to every police officer in the entire state and say, this guy was mean to me and broke into my facility and stole these items. And all of them, all the officers will look at me and say, great, I'll go get him. Who is he? I, I don't know. You tell me. The problem with traditional storage is I've got to put cameras everywhere so that I can see them accessing the unit specifically, so that I can go try to track down who it was and what happened and what was stolen and what's going on. With boat and RV, I design my cameras differently because I have a unique value in the vehicles, and that is a license plate. And they're also very large. It's easy to notice when they're moving or being affected. So the camera layout does change based on traditional storage and boat and RV. If I have boat and RV and I'm adding traditional storage, I add a lot more cameras. As far as the access controls, they still work the same. What I do to add a little bit of a value to my tenants is I put 2 keypads on the same gooseneck so that RV tenants that are in a large RV can exit the gate without having to get out and walk around the vehicle. I have found that a lot of them, even though there's Wi-Fi or excuse me, Bluetooth to open the gate, they don't seem to use that very often. They still like that analog keypad. And the other thing is I watch the entry and exits very closely with cameras. I have pinhole cameras on the keypads to see the face of the individual that is accessing and leaving the property, so that I have a better chance of trying to find out who it was. The biggest thing that you can do that's going to alienate your tenants when there is a break-in is to say, my cameras weren't working, or I don't have a good angle, or they cut the chain, moved the gate, and walked out. It was very easy for them, right? All we're trying to do is create hurdles for these individuals that are going to do harm regardless of what we do. And if that tenant comes in angry, which is justified, angry that their vehicle was tampered with, stolen, broken into, we can show them this is the information we were able to gather and track and compile relative to that incident. This is how we're going to help you with the police officer, the incident report, or the insurance claim. We've done the legwork through thoughtful security and preventative measures. But I train my managers to be very accurate in the way that they speak to our tenants. We don't provide active security. I do not have an active security guard walking around the property. And if there is a break-in, they're going to run up and handcuff them and haul them off to jail. We add features that they wouldn't have if they stored it in an empty lot, like gates, fences, cameras, lights, asphalt, things of that nature. Those help to give you peace of mind that it is better than storing the alternative, which is along the 5 freeway or in the Walmart parking lot or things of that nature.
Thanks, Greg. Angie, anything that you see out there? Greg really covered it. Would you agree?
Sorry, Angie.
As the security concerns?
No, I love it. I mean, I think security is probably, regardless of what type of storage you're developing, security is probably the #1 thing that you hear seems to be a concern with the storage industry in general. Criminals are getting smarter. These things are obviously not designed to be prisons or fortresses that people can't, somebody wants to get into a storage facility or into a storage unit for that matter, where there is a will, there is a way. And, as they devise new methods to breach whatever security protocol we put in place, I think the industry has done a really good job responding to that dynamic over the last 2 to 3 years. And there's been in the ways that the industry has progressed the most over the last 5 years has really been in utilizing and leveraging technology to create a more secure environment. We see new products come on the market every day, new ideas on how to enhance this and enhance the security measures that you can put in place as an operator. And it's probably one of the most exciting things to explore when you go to our industry trade show and events, is just to see how it's evolving. But I do think that it's, that's really where the focus on technology has been, and has been in supporting creating a more secure environment for the storage owner operator. So it's exciting stuff. All of what I do, everything that Greg said resonates, perfectly. We're really in the business of trying to design the projects to create hurdles, so it makes it more difficult for criminals to do nefarious things with the things we're storing. So
Thank you. And thank you both for your time today. I know we went a little over and I apologize. I'm trying to get better about that, but you guys just have such good information. If there's anything you feel that was really important in this area that we didn't cover, please feel free, as we're doing our closing here to add anything in within reason. But Angie, I'm gonna hand it over to you. If you could just give us your name, company, what you do, what your company does in this industry, and then your contact information for folks that want to reach you after listening to this.
perfect. Well, thanks again, Amy, for inviting me to be a part of it. Obviously, fun to talk about an industry I love. Again, I'm Angie. I'm with MakoRabco. We're a metal building company that does specialize in both the self-storage and the boat and RV storage space. And, part and parcel to that, when I say we're a metal building company, we do structurally engineer, design, supply, and install self-storage and boat and RV storage projects for the storage industry. We're nationwide. We have 2 offices, one in San Diego and another in Orlando. So we cover both East and West Coast, and have about 12 not independent, but regional sales managers that are strategically placed in different geographies across the country that can help serve our clients on a more local level. Obviously, as you could probably see, Greg and I have a long history of working together in the storage space. We do whatever we can to support our general contractor and developer clients, and are happy to work with either or folks like Greg who are both sometimes. So, thanks again for being here. And if somebody wants to reach out to me, website's www.makorabco.com, and reach out to me on my cell phone direct if anyone has any interest, and that's 253-677-7150.
Thanks, Angie. And Greg, or should I say Mr. Advisory Board President, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Angie. What I love about this opportunity is that TSN creates a team that allows for the best opportunity for success. Even through this training or Zoom call that we're doing now, Amy is introducing people that can help get you across the finish line, both on schedule, within budget, and poised for the best success possible. I've worked with Angie, as she said, for many years. And the value of that is that it's not just the design team that you need to be cohesive and intelligent and understand the ramifications of the decisions made on paper. But when we bring on MakoRabco to erect and install our metal buildings, I know that we're going to have the best product at the end of the day. And again, that goes to team. And so TSN really is the foundation of the best possible team. Introductions to the various advisory board members and corporate partners that TSN has built. It's a smattering of available resources to you, and Amy works extremely hard to do that, and she's one of the best to do it. She's extremely good at networking and bringing on professionals like Angie who know everything there is to know about storage and metal buildings and how to do it, and the best way to get it to the finish line. So I appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Greg Ellsworth with Self-Storage Consulting Group. We do feasibility studies, architecture, general contracting, third-party management, and really act in a partnership fashion with all of our clients to make sure that nothing is forgotten, nothing goes by the wayside, and we don't have those oops moments at the end of the project that cost us time or money or credibility. So if anybody wants to reach out to me after this discussion, my email address is Greg, Greg, at sscg1.com. And my phone number is area code 480-378-6724. I appreciate the opportunity, Angie. and Amy. It's always great to be with both of you. It's a good experience.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Angie, both of you for being here today. I know you're both very busy. I want to briefly introduce myself. I'm Amy Bix. I'm president of Toy Storage Nation. Toy Storage Nation is an education media brand that really focuses on Class A boat and RV storage. We have a number of resources. First of all is our website. It's simply our namesake, toystoragenation.com. We have new content going up every day, articles, case studies, you name it, reports, and then as well as our full day workshops. Full day, we cover just about every topic you can think of from A to Z, from financing, feasibility, construction, operations, marketing, security, you name it, the gamut. But more important than the presentations are the folks that you're going to meet there. We have experts such as Angie and Greg and that caliber that focus in these markets and have been there and done it, and can help you along the way. Another thing is podcasts that we do and our membership program. You can find everything at toystoragenation.com. So if you need to reach me, you have any questions, my number is 602-909-3910, or you can get me at amy.bix, amy.bix at toystoragenation.com. Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.